The room is square and mercilessly bright. The kind of community hall light that flattens faces into one tone and shows the scuffs on rented chairs. The fans hum above the pastor's microphone, beating warm air into the smell of wilting lilies and floor polish. People stand, shuffle, and sit according to the white cards placed on the rows. On the front row, my grandmother's name is printed in looping gold, with 3 seats behind it that say immediate family. Mine is not there. I am at the end of an aisle beside the AV cart where a VHS player once lived and a laptop now blinks its blue cursor. The pastor clears his throat and says, "Family, please take your seats up front. Friends and other relations, we welcome you to the rows behind." My brother looks back at me and then looks away. The cards have decided who is blood, who is water, and who is to be politely absorbed into the carpet. Across the center aisle, my aunt nods to the usher with a crescent moon smile I've seen on the days she pretended to like me. She lifts a finger and the usher removes a card from a 4th chair in the front row and pockets it. A scent of camphor and citrus oil comes off the polished wood of the casket. The bouquet my neighbor sent white stalks with a violet ribbon leans on a stand. The AC struggles. There is heat in the walls from an October sun, and the chill reaches only ankles. Like a memory of winter rather than winter itself. I imagine the place card they printed for me, where it went, and which bin it sleeps in now. My hands lie flat on my skirt, palms cool. As the pastor's assistant checks the sound and the slideshow starts, my grandmother washing silver bowls. My grandmother's hands tying mint into little bundles. My grandmother holding my face in a kitchen clouded with steam. The speakers crackle. Somewhere near the lectern, 2 cousins whisper. And I hear a phrase they've been trained to say. We just don't know her situation, and even though they say it at a private volume, it lands in my body like a stamp. Today's stakes are simple. If I take the chair I was assigned, I will wear their smallness on my skin for years. If I take the chair I deserve, I will be called a disruption. In the next minutes, you'll see how I learn to move through the middle. Not with voice raised, but with receipts placed, ranked, and witnessed. The pastor begins with prayer. On the 2nd row, a friend of my grandmother's rubs her fingers over a ring she's worn for 50 years. When heads lift, my aunt stands and announces that the first reader will be my son, the eldest grandchild. She doesn't look at me. A small tumble of pamphlets slips from the program table at the back. The sound is papery and final. I notice the pastor's binder is tabbed in 3 colors. I notice the end of the ribbon on my neighbor's bouquet is frayed, as if cut with dull scissors. I notice that the usher's pocket bulges a little, from a square thing that might be a place card. And I file away the observation the way a tailor slides a pin into cloth. When the first hymn ends, a hush settles that is not grief so much as waiting. The pastor nods. I stay seated. The AV cart's blue light pulses on my wrist like a metronome. My grandmother used to tap my wrist when I counted too fast, when I rushed, when my mind skipped ahead 3 steps and tangled. Measured Anilla, she would say. Measured is powerful. On the front row, my aunt adjusts her silk scarf until the printed vines lie straight. The ushers move again, fussing with the edges of the reserved cards as if order matters more than air. There's a missing envelope on the memory table. My cousin Sarah had arranged a series of items: apron, rosary, wooden spoon, a small ledger with crocheted edges Anne told me to bring. The old brass key my grandmother kept on a red string for the trunk under her bed. I put it in a brown envelope and labeled it Hall Trunk Key Red String. It is the one thing not on the table now. A thin edge of dust marks where an envelope would have rested. I sweep the table with my eyes once, twice. Then I glance to the lectern. The pastor's assistant follows my look and raises her eyebrows, almost imperceptibly. I answer with the same small lift. In the 3rd row, a man I don't know dabs at his forehead with a folded tissue. And the perfume of frankincense from the incense sticks that smolder at the exit doors thickens, then thins. There are 4 open loops by the time my cousin finishes his reading. And I have tucked them into my mind with neat labels. The missing place card. The envelope not on the table. The cousin's scripted phrase. The usher's pocket. And a 5th older loop, my grandmother's will. Drafted, then misplaced, and then suddenly remembered by my aunt with a flourish that did not include my name. We will come to that. When people talk about family cruelty, they favor the operatic cruelty, the slammed door, the shouted slur. I trained for the small kind, the precision kind. As operations manager for a manufacturing firm, I learned to notice how people misuse systems, how rules are shaped around a favored few and enforced only on the disliked. I learned to reverse a charge without drawing blood, to escalate a complaint without saying the word complaint. I learned to file, serve, execute, notarize, record. My grandmother watched me the way some women watch weather. She knew when I was moving into a storm. I will not shout. I'd told her once over fish, curry, and rice. I'll use process and receipts. She'd smiled, then reached into the fridge for a chilled steel tumbler and set it in front of me. The glass had sweated onto the table, and the ring of water stayed there for minutes after she lifted it. I don't take the aisle seat. I stand, smooth my skirt, and walk to the side door of the hall where the pastor's assistant, her name is, Miriam, stands with a clipboard. The door is propped with a rubber wedge. Cool air leaks from the narrow gap to the hallway, smelling of lemon floor solution and the faint wet of a mop. Could I see the seating plan? I ask. It is not a request. Exactly. Miriam has the controlled competence of someone who can hold a funeral together without crying. She flips the clipboard and shows me a printed spreadsheet with columns for name. Row, seat, relation. By row 1, seat 4, my name is typed Anila Granddaughter. It's been crossed out with blue ink, and the initials, R.S., are written next to the strike. We both look at the initials. We both hear my aunt's laugh rise and fall at the front of the hall, the laugh she uses when she's in charge. A strip of cold hallway light stretches across Miriam's shoes like a ruler. Who is ours? I ask. Miriam does not answer because she does not need to. Would you mind if I snap a picture of this? I say instead. She hesitates only for a breath, then nods. The phone's chime is soft, respectful. The timestamp stamps itself without fanfare. When I turn back toward the hall, heat brushes my face. And the fans carry the scent of jasmine from someone's hair to me, light but insistent. I do not walk to the front row. I walk to the memory table. There is a small brass bell there. The bell my grandmother rang when tea was ready. The handle is warm from the sun through the window. I slip my fingers under the tablecloth and feel the underside of the wood for tape. There is none. On the floor near the leg, however, a corner of brown peeks from under the table edge. I kneel, the wooden floor cool through my stockings, and draw the envelope out. It has a footprint on it and a crescent of moisture where something damp was set on top. The string of red inside makes a soft, linty sound against the paper as I test it with my thumb. The seal is unbroken. The label in my handwriting is clear. I place the envelope on the table where the dust edge is. The bell's handle cools. Family, the pastor says again, and there's a subtle pressure in the word. It's as if his tongue refuses to press it against everyone's teeth. I hold my breath for 2 counts and then I exhale. I am alert in the way a diver is alert. The room is a body of water and I know the currents now. I hear the script line again, from another mouth this time. We just don't know her situation. It will matter later. There is a way to let a man in a suit announce your place. And there is a way to announce it yourself with a quiet gesture that changes everything. I touch the envelope with 2 fingers and feel the fibers. My grandmother's last month in hospital taught me to catalog documents. The admissions checklist, the consent forms, the note for the cardiologist, the pharmacy receipts. She had signed a will 2 years prior with a lawyer who took tea in his garden and kept a rubber stamp in his pocket. He never stamps unless it is witnessed, she'd said, pleased. After she died, my aunt announced there was a newer will. My grandmother made verbally to her, clarifying everything. Clarifying meant tightening the circle. Clarifying meant I was out. The lawyer, when I called, had said I have nothing on file newer than 2023. And then, after a small pause, but you may want to check the bank logs. There were 2 deposits last winter into a trust that did not go where your aunt thinks. He liked my grandmother. He didn't like my aunt. He liked the truth like a mechanic likes clean tools. I had not come today empty-handed. In my phone were screenshots with timestamps of wire confirmations. A PDF of the trust filed with the registrar, executed, notarized. Recorded an audio recording with my grandmother saying on a clear day what she wanted done with the trunk and its contents. And a reversal email from the bank manager showing a transfer my aunt initiated from the trust being rescinded, and the funds frozen pending the executor's formal acceptance. There were affidavits, too. One from the neighbor who brought stew on the third day and had sat with my grandmother at the kitchen table while she signed a handwritten letter. A second from the nurse who had witnessed the letter and who stood now by the back wall with her hands folded. My ally list was quiet but real. Miriam, the assistant. Hazen, the old lawyer with the rubber stamp. Nadim, the bank manager who had a memory for wire IDs. Aisha, the nurse. My neighbor Sumaya. The registrar's clerk who had certified the trust filing. And the funeral home director whose job was to keep order, any order, so long as it was written down. The hymn after the eulogy ends with a chord that rings longer than anyone expected. As if the pianist got lost in what the final note means. The pastor motions for immediate family to rise. My aunt's husband puts a hand on her elbow, guiding her like a stage manager. I walk up the side aisle, not to the front row, not to the back, because they have set that trap warm and waiting, but to the lectern steps. Pastor, I say quietly. His eyes are kind and tired. Today he will be accused by someone no matter what he does. I will speak after the third song. I say, so he can place me in his tabs. My remarks are under 2 minutes. There's also a correction to the seating plan. He glances at Miriam, who lifts her clipboard in confirmation. He nods, once. We do not need to make a scene to make a record. Behind me, something shifts. A pressure change. It's the sound of a door opening. Cold air moves like a sentence through the warm room, and the incense smell rides it for a second. My aunt turns, sees me near the lectern, and her smile tightens to an embroidery of itself. She mouths something to my cousin, who takes out his phone. In the reflection, in the glass frame on the memory table, I watch his thumbs work. The speed is familiar. He's sending the script line to the cousin chat, and one of them will repeat it to a friend. And I will hear it a fourth time, and it will tell me exactly where to put the lever. The third song ends. The pastor looks to me. I ramp my breathing down one level as if I'm stepping onto a treadmill and want to feel my feet. We have a few family words, he says, scanning the front row. I step to the lectern and adjust the mic down a centimeter because the room expects me to be shorter, and I am not. The paper on the lectern smells faintly like toner. My grandmother taught me to be measured, I say. She also taught me keys. I touch the envelope on the table like a metronome. There's a trunk under her bed that many of you know. The key to that is here. She opened that trunk with me 2 months before she died, and we took out a document together. The lawyer who keeps the rubber stamp witnessed it. I don't say his name. I don't need to. The bank logs are recorded. A trust was executed, notarized, and recorded with the registrar with a clear beneficiary list. Any transfers initiated outside that list have been rescinded. The funds are frozen pending executor acceptance, which the court clerk will certify on Monday. After the service, I will ask that we seat according to the plan the church printed. Row 1 has 4 chairs reserved. They hold 3 cards. There's a missing card, but I believe the usher has it in his pocket. He can put it back. And then I'll ask that we bring out the trunk. The stillness that follows is a sound with edges. Miriam sets the clipboard on the usher's stand and looks at the usher, not unkindly. He reaches into his pocket and draws out a white card with my name. The motion is practiced. He sets it on the 4th seat, smooths it, and steps back to small steps. My aunt's lipstick hardens in the line where she presses her lips. My cousin opens his mouth and then shuts it. He's not the one with the stomach for this. The pastor doesn't move. He doesn't have to. The room resizes, chairs tilt, and air builds into a wind that is only inside me. For a second, I see my grandmother's kitchen light, the way it warmed the orange tiles and made every steel pot a moon. The AC exhale touches my ankle. The wax of a candle near the casket softens as it burns, and a sweet, damp smell rises from it. "Seems I'm not family," I say, once, because they wanted the line to be my wound, and I choose it to be my blade. It lands without echo. The way a key turned at the correct angle will not scrape the lock. After the service, I do not linger for people to pat my hand. I walk down the hall to the funeral home director's office and knock twice. He looks up from a ledger. His tie is loose. "We'll need the trunk brought into the hall," I say. My grandmother's home is 5 minutes away. The neighbor has the spare key. The letter in the envelope authorizes it. The funeral home's liability waiver is ready to be countersigned. I'll take responsibility for any transport damage. We'll keep the chain of custody recorded. We'll photograph the lock, the seal, and the trunk's contents in front of the pastor, the nurse who witnessed the letter, and the bank manager if he can get here. The director blinks once, twice. Then he stands, nods. "We'll need a dolly," he says. "We'll need to," I answer. "It's heavier than it looks." Somaya, my neighbor, answers my call on the second ring. She's already in the parking lot with the spare key on a lanyard that jingles when she jogs. "I'll be 5, she says. Her breath is even. She runs in the evenings, and her rhythm calms me. I text the bank manager. He texts back, 15. The lawyer, Hassan, doesn't text. He calls. "Do not open anything until I arrive. I'll bring the stamp. Also, I have your grandmother's original trust and the addendum. Your aunt will say many things now. She may try to move people as if they were chairs." His chuckle is made of sand and sunlight. "Don't let her." When I step back into the hall, the hush is different. It is the hush of a rule being applied instead of waved. My aunt is by the memory table, one finger under the envelope's flap. "That's not for you," I say. The letter inside is addressed to me and the pastor to be read together. She withdraws her finger and smiles with the top half of her face. "We were only looking," she says. And the "we" includes people who have never looked at me unless they needed the kind of competence that comes without credit. "We wanted to make sure you weren't confused. We just don't know your situation." There it is, the 4th time. The line that will connect the dots the way a ruler draws a straight edge through what a shaky hand would have curved. I don't give them the argument they want. "You don't need to," I say. The registrar does. The bank does. The court clerk will on Monday. The pastor needs the seating plan corrected. The usher needs to return my card, which he did. If you want to know my situation, you can read my grandmother's letter when the pastor does. I look at the usher and say, "Thank you," because refusing to be petty can be sharper than any pettiness. The hall air has warmed by noon. The fans chop the light into squares and lay it across shoulders and hair. I walk to the 4th seat in the front row and sit. The card is light against my fingers. I feel the room recalculate itself around this small, correct act. My cousin on the edge of the 2nd row leans forward to see who will stop me. No one does. I feel my grandmother's ring, which I tucked into the seam of my pocket this morning, press against the side of my thigh, a small round discipline. The dolly squeaks when the funeral home staff rolls it in. The sound turns heads. My aunt stiffens. The director keeps his face neutral and says, "We have a family request to bring an item into the hall for the remembrance." The trunk arrives like an old friend who has been invited at last. Its brass corners are dull in the light. The red string's knot lies flat across the keyhole. Hassan arrives with a small leather case. He carries it like a doctor might carry a kit for house calls. Nadim, the bank manager, slips in through the side door with his tie loosened and a folder under his arm. Aisha, the nurse, takes a place near the trunk, hands clasped. The pastor stands by the lectern and lowers his microphone. We make a circle by habit. The funeral home director places an evidence bag, unused, on a chair, purely for the optics of clean handling. Miriam has her phone's camera open on video mode. The time stamp floats in the corner. I hold the envelope and tear it open along the seam. The paper inside smells faintly of my grandmother's lavender drawer sachets. I read with the pastor, trading sentences the way we used to trade chess moves. To the pastor and to my granddaughter Anila, it begins. Please read together. It states that the trunk contains household ledgers, a list of jewelry to be distributed, the deed to a small plot in the cantonment where my grandfather lies, and the trust addendum instructing that proceeds from the sale of the old shopfront be used to fund 2 scholarships at the school where my grandmother taught handwriting. It names the executor, me. It lists the corroborating documents, the bank wire confirmations by numbers, the registrar's recording number, the affidavits, the nurse's witness note, the date the neighbor stood in the kitchen and poured tea while my grandmother signed. The letter's tone is not dramatic. It is practical, slightly humorous, entirely my grandmother. If anyone fusses, she wrote in a line that makes Hazen snort. Tell them to look in the mirror and fuss at themselves for a while. When they are done, have them cut vegetables until their hands remember the point of hands. No one breathes for a stretch that feels like a held cord. Hazen flips open his leather case and removes the stamp. We are not making anything new today, he says. We are certifying that which already is. He stamps the copy of the letter he brought, and then he stamps the bank manager's folder where the reversal emails are clipped. The sound is a neat, wet thunk each time. My aunt starts to speak and stops. The tell when it comes is small. She sets her glass of water too hard on the table, okay? And a little arc of water jumps the rim and lands on the floor beside her shoe. Her eyes go at once to the splash. People who control rooms do not like fluids behaving without instruction. She switches to the script she has used for years. This is very sudden. Her son, on cue, says, "No one told us." Her daughter says, "This is so embarrassing," and touches a camera angle on her phone. The nurse, Aisha, clears her throat. "Ma'am," she says, "your mother said all this very clearly on June 12th at 11:23 in the morning. The windows were open. It smelled like coriander. She made me repeat the clauses back to her so I wouldn't forget. The quiet that follows is not sympathy. It is the sound of a room watching a blade strip cloth seam by seam. We document. We photograph the red string untying. We log the time. We record the angle of the brass fitting. We lift the lid. Inside, papers, a pouch with gold bangles, the deed in a blue folder with frayed edges. The ledger book wrapped in a napkin that once saw birthdays. Hazen matches the trust addendum to his copy and nods. Nadim marks the wire IDs against his list 14 digits. Then the slashes, then the bank's initials. He reads them aloud, and the numbers are a kind of prayer. Miriam uploads the video to a shared folder, then shares the link with the pastor and me. The director signs as witness. The registrar's clerk cannot come, but I send a photo of the recorded stamp on the addendum to her, and she replies with a single line. Recorded and indexed as of 10:44 a.m. Copy ready Monday. The word recorded sits in my bones like a chair that fits your back. My aunt tries one last lever. "This is very ugly," she says. "Couldn't we handle this privately?" It is meant to evoke shame. It is meant to use the public as threat. "We are handling it," I say. "Publicly, because you elected to make the seating public. Privately would have been correct seating and the trunk key where it was placed. We would have read this at home, with tea." The pastor turns his palm up. The gesture is that of any parent who has just been told the exact truth by a child and recognizes both the risk and the clean. He says we will continue with the recessional hymn, and he looks older and younger at once. The service flows then, not on the timetable my aunt printed in her curled font, but on the one the room prefers when the friction of wrongness is removed. When people file past to pay respects, the strongest smell in the hall is beeswax and the faint salt of careful grief. My brother squeezes my shoulder. He's always been gentle to me in private. In public, he's learned to measure the distance between loyalty and his mortgage. He says nothing now. He doesn't need to. My grandmother's friend, the one with the fidgeted ring, presses a folded paper into my hand. Later, I unfold it and find a check she's written to the school's scholarship fund in my grandmother's name. The ink blotches slightly where her hand shook. The blot is beautiful. Outside, the sun is sharp. The funeral home's awning sends geometric shadows onto the step. When you stand in them, the air is 5 degrees cooler. The hearse idles, A garbage truck passes and the sour-sweet smell of fermentation slides over us, then is gone. We load flowers into cars. My aunt manages not to touch the trunk. I see her fingers clench once, then unclench as if she is practicing looking at her own hands. She doesn't look at me. She looks past me, to the part of the air where she puts people she has not learned to name without a cost. I could be cruel. I could be kind. I am neither. I am exact. The aftermath is measured in paperwork. On Monday, I file for formal acceptance of executorship with the clerk. The clerk stamps. The stamp squeaks slightly on the rubber pad before it touches paper. Hazen drafts a letter that is both firm and warm. My dear, it begins to my aunt, and then it sets out the clauses. The dates, the attached evidence. Nadim sends account statements with the frozen funds clearly marked. And an escrow account is opened with a number that ends in my grandmother's street address, an accident that feels like a wink. The registrar mails certified copies to me and to the court. I draft distribution letters for the jewelry with simple language. This bangle will go to Sarah, as per the list, to be countersigned on receipt. The neighbor Sumaya comes over with her rice cooker and cooks while I print, collate, and staple. The kitchen smells like cumin and steam. The cat sits on the chair where my grandmother used to fold dishcloths and watches me with the lazy concern of a creature who believes in gravity more than law. There are ripples. My aunt resigns from the charity board where she once raised money by requiring donors to like her. To donors withdraw public support with statements that sound like weather reports. We will reevaluate our commitments in light of updated governance. The school's headmistress sends a note, handwritten, with a discipline I admire. We will name the handwriting prize for your grandmother. She taught my S to stop looking like question marks. The hospital quietly updates their policy on verbal will claims. They will now require a nurse and a relative, not tied to distribution, to witness any such statement and to file an incident report that same day. The usher at the church receives a new script. It includes an underline, "Do not alter seating cards unless instructed," by the family member named executrix executor or the presiding pastor. Record any changes on the plan and initial. Miriam printed the updated script. She sent me a photo of the underline. It made me smile. People recalibrate to each other in small ways, like furniture shifted half an inch at a time. A cousin unfollows me on social media. Another sends a voice note that says, after 5 seconds of breath, "I'm sorry I didn't say anything." I listen to it twice and reply once. "Thank you," I say. Next time, a hand on a shoulder is enough. She writes back a heart and the kind of sad face that people send when they mean it. The neighbor's teenage son, who wants to be an architect, stops by to ask about the trunk's joinery. We look at the dovetails together. Dust rises when we pull the drawer. It smells like old books and cardamom. "It's beautiful," he says. "It holds," I say. I do not gloat. I do not apologize for not apologizing. I draft thank you notes with clean lines. I include copies of the trust addendum, redacted where necessary. I include the bank's certifications. I include the registrar's recording number. I return the stamp to Hazen after he forgets it in my hallway, and call it a souvenir in the way of a joke that honors but doesn't take. He laughs and comes to retrieve it. And we drink tea with a sprig of mint because my grandmother liked the smell on her fingers after she drank. At the school assembly 2 weeks later, I stand at the back. The morning sun throws a bar of light across the stage, and the dust in it looks like notes on a sheet of paper. The children sing the song about quiet and loud hands. The new plaque is unveiled for the handwriting prize. The metal glints and then steadies. The headmistress reads a paragraph about my grandmother without adjectives. It is perfect. I feel something loosen at the base of my skull. Not grief exactly, but the release not of a long-held grip. When I step outside, a breeze moves through the neem trees and the smell is green and bitter and clean. At dinner that night, I light one of the beeswax candles we'd used at the service. The flame leans toward the window where night air slips in. My apartment is not large. The living room and the kitchen share a border like two neighbors who lend each other bowls. The trunk sits by the window with a linen runner on it, and on top I keep the small brass bell. When I tap it, it rings clear and then slides down to silence. Not so unlike a stamp's thunk, and the silence that follows when a thing becomes official. On the wall is a framed copy of the trust's recording stamp. It looks like a sea creature with all its arms labeled. When my aunt writes to ask for the silk scarf my grandmother promised her long ago, I pack it with tissue and include a letter. Received request for silk scarf. Enclosed. Kindly sign and return. The enclosed receipt for the estate folder. She returns the receipt with a different pen used on a last signature. The inconsistency bothers me in a way that's almost funny. People think power is in drama. They forget it also lives in fountain pens and black ink and how you place a chair back at the angle you found it. At the 40-day gathering, they set 4 chairs again. The cards have the same font. The usher puts mine where it belongs. He nods to me as if we've learned a private language. My aunt sits without rearranging. During the prayers, I am still. After I stand and pass around dates and sugared almonds, when someone says in a voice, "For listening, we just don't know her situation," I smile a little and make eye contact so that the line cracks and falls apart. "Seems I'm not family," I say, almost kindly, and the words enter the air like a hand turning a dial to word warmer. My cousin hears it and looks away, and then later he looks back. And in that look is the first splinter of something that might be repair, not because anyone begged, but because the paperwork made room for it by removing the need to perform kinship as a favor. On the day I bring home the certified copies from the registrar, I stop by the tailor who keeps his machine near the curb. The oil smell of the motor is sweet and metallic. He hems a curtain I found in a thrift shop, and when I hang it, the evening light goes thin and gold through it. I cook lentils. The garlic pops in the pan. I leave my phone face down. I take the bell from the trunk and ring it once, not for anyone to come, but for the sound of order settling into a home that is exactly the size of one person's honest life. I end where I started, in a community hall, but this time I'm here for the school's scholarship ceremony. The fans still hum. The lights still flatten. The scuffs still show. But when the headmistress asks me to say a few words and the microphone smells like chalk dust and plastic, I say only this. My grandmother believed process protects the quiet. Today we honor that by stamping what is already true. A single clap begins and then the rest come, not wild but aligned. When I step down, a girl with perfect cursive hands me a note that says, "Thank you for the key." And the red string around my wrist piece I kept brushes the paper. If you've read this far and you know a quiet person who needs this reminder, pass it along. And if you're ready to learn the calm way to claim your seat with receipts, not shouting, reach out. I'll share the checklist.